Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Cheers Dears. I am joined today by Tim Mendees, the author of The Pseudopod that Rocks the Cradle. Tim, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, pleasure.
Now, this is our second international podcast, so this is really fun. My first guest internationally speaking was David Green, who actually pointed me in your direction.
Yes. You'll be cursing him later for that. Yeah.
And he had nothing but great things to say about you and the beautiful forward that he did for your book. And I
love it.
I was great.
He had to sneak in. He likes to remind me of all the stupid things that I've done. So he always tells the story about when I asked for an extension on microfiction and I got the word count completely confused. He had to sneak it in, the little scamp.
And what's an extra zero within word count? I mean, come on.
Exactly. Yeah. If nothing else, it's made me pay more attention to the brief now.
It's, when you're a storyteller, you get excited, you see the prompt, like, all right, I've got the whole story. Wait, what? 250 words? What?
Yeah. I struggle with anything. I struggle with things like that anyway. I mean, I'm one of those writers that couldn't keep to word count. You put a gun to my head. Yeah. I'm always asking for an extension. It's like the other running joke between like David and the other people is that if somebody asks me to write a drabble, that'll be my next novella. Because that has actually happened. So I had an idea for a drabble, it became a short story, and then it became a novelette, and then it became a novella. Yeah, that's kind of how it goes in my head. I get these ideas and I start typing and things happen. It's yeah.
It's sometimes it works for the better, because when you're restricted to a word count, just let your imagination flow.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's plenty of markets in there. So, I mean, if you do go ridiculously over and they say, no, it's too big, you idiot, there's always somewhere else you can shop it, isn't there? It's just, there's
right.
So many, like the market is so huge at the moment. It's great. So it's just a question of finding the right place for the right thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and especially right now as we approach spooky season, if you will. I guess by the time our interview comes out, we'll actually be in the week of Halloween, which will be really fun.
Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, my flat will be even more Halloweenified than it already is. I'm one of those people that buys all the decorations and then never takes them down. So
if it's your thing, it's your thing.
Exactly. So every year my flat gets more and more like like an old Hammer horror film. It's just, it's what
why put it away if you enjoy it?
Exactly. I just think a few fairy lights, a few pumpkins, bats and stuff. Just really, make the place a home. Yeah.
And speaking of horror aesthetics, you want to tell us a little bit more about your wonderful book, The Pseudopod that Rocks the Cradle?
Indeed, yeah. I mean, that's my first short story collection. And it's basically a dream come true for me because I read a lot of short stories and things like that. Because a lot of the people I'm into, people like H.P. Lovecraft and all that, they mostly did short stories. And so my big thing starting out was I want a short story collection at some point. So I've got it and I'm really excited about it. So I'm phenomenally excited. It's 18 stories. A lot of them are from quite early in my writing career, and also some of them are quite new. So it's quite a good snapshot of my first couple of years being published. Some of my earliest work is in there, and obviously some stuff I've written especially for it. And it was kind of easy to put together because everything I write is sort of linked in a weird way anyway, because I've sort of created my own little milieu and all the rest of it. So all my stories sort of fall into my own kind of, dare I say, mythos in a way. And so putting it together, it was just like, is there a theme to it? Well, yeah, of course there is. It's it's the weird cosmic world of Tim Mendees. Yeah, and I had great fun writing the stuff for it, especially because I had the idea for the title first before I wrote the title story. So then I had to write a story that fit. So, it was like, I have to call it the Pseudopod that rocks the cradle. That's just so me. So
and fitting with many of your stories, yes.
yeah, exactly. It's just, the sort of cosmic horror Lovecraftian thing. It just, and also because it's kind of funny. It's a bit silly, which is also very me. Yeah, and it was just a great sort of process putting it together with the editor Ron Linson. He did such a superb job on it. I've never worked with an editor who is that hands-on in terms of the editing process. Like, he will go the extra mile and do research and make sure you haven't cocked up. Because them things where you'll put a date and you'll say, "Hang on a minute, is that right? Was that out then?" It's because there's always going to be somebody sitting at home reading your book and go, "Well, actually, they didn't release that model of car until 2 years after your story."
Yes, absolutely.
It's great having that double check, because we make mistakes, don't we? Especially when you sort of, because the way I write is I'll kind of get an idea and I'll just go for it. So we make mistakes, so it's really nice having that little extra check, and the cover that Deidre J. Owen, because they're the two people from Mannequin who co-founders of Mannequin Press. The cover she did was just phenomenal. It blew me away, because obviously it was like, when I put it together, I had an idea of sort of vaguely what I wanted for a cover, and I didn't have to tell her at all. She just goes, "I've had an idea. What about this?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's it right there." So,
oh, perfect.
Yeah, it's lovely.
And so fitting with your stories. Yeah.
It was just a superb bit of work. I couldn't have asked for a better cover. I absolutely love it. I'm going to get a poster of it, I think. Just the woman with the tentacles and everything. I could see that on my bedroom wall next to my Cthulhu poster, Yeah.
Now, I think when I was reading through your stories, when I first started, actually, I was a little, I don't want to say apprehensive, but I was like, pseudopods, okay, sure. Like, let's go for this. And I started reading, and then I kept reading and reading and reading and reading. And by the time I was done, I was like, what do you mean that's it? I wanted more. And
excellent. That's really nice to hear. Yeah.
You're such a good storyteller. And
thank you.
My biggest takeaways from it were listen to your elders. And to quote Georgia and Karen from My Favorite Murder, a fantastic podcast, stay out of the forest.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't go poking around in abandoned tombs, that kind of thing, Yeah.
Yeah. So they were really fun.
Yeah. Excellent. I'm really glad you enjoyed it. So I would say before we came on, that would have been awkward if you didn't.
Yeah. I'd be like, but no, they were really fun. And I think the two that really stayed with me the most, that I would love to see even more of, would be your first story, Rouse Them Not.
Rouse Them Not, yeah.
And Mr. Mannequin.
Oh,
that was a really interesting one. I like that detective feel to it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because we're saying about the links. I mean, some of the characters in that, Detective Sergeant Finch, he pops up in some other works of mine. He's in a couple of the stories in that, but he's in more in other things. And he's in a novella of mine that's coming out on I want to say the 12th of October. I think it's the 12th of October. October's so confusing to me right now, because obviously Pseudopod is out on the 5th, and then like a week later, I've got a novella out, The Grime of the Ancient Mariner. And Detective Sergeant Finch is one of the lead characters in that, and that is more like a police procedural with cosmic horror. So yeah, it's more along that kind of lines, the sort of Mr. Mannequin lines. But, yeah, it's that was one of the earliest ones I wrote. Mr. Mannequin. Rouse Them Not. It was first released in It Calls from the Forest from Erie River, and that one was really well received at the time. So I think that's why I put it at number one. First story, So I know
it really calls to you.
No,
it
excellent.
touches on these like folklorian myths that we're told, or these folklore tales that we're told and that we hear. And it actually reminded me of one of my short stories that I wrote called The Orchard.
Oh,
And
nice.
I remember I live in San Diego currently, which is a
Yeah.
very not orchardy type of place. I mean, you go out
Yes.
east, but it's not what you envision when you hear an orchard. Of course, it's California.
Yes.
We have a ton of fruit grown here, but
Vineyards everywhere. Yeah.
oh yeah, it's great. But you know, the true, I think what people envision orchards are more of what we see on the East Coast or up north. And a few
Yeah.
years ago, I had the pleasure of going and spending a lot of time up in Massachusetts and on the
Oh,
orchards
nice.
out there. And when I was reading your story, I was just in those orchards again and seeing those mangled trees and very much envisioning the
Yeah.
twins and the feeling around them of leave those trees alone.
Yeah, well, because the thing is, the West Country here, like Cornwall, Devon, Somerset, and Herefordshire. That's where all of our orchards are. It's cider territory. So I've been to these places, and there's some of these old ones, these really old vineyards, some of these really old orchards with these wonderfully wizened old trees. You know what I mean? And it's great. And when you get the sun going down, and you see all these tangled boughs and all that, it's really, really, really cool. And you get a lot of that makes the traditional wassailing and all that kind of thing over here. I mean, you still get people doing that, and which is a great little tradition, because what they generally do is then they'll break out that year's like cider and get hammered,
Sounds great.
Exactly. More festivals like that, in my opinion. More festivals where you basically go around an orchard, put spiced toast in trees, and then get hammered. But yeah, don't wake up the wrong tree. You never know, do you? No. That one's a really funny one, because that actually started out. I saw a call, and it was for a children's horror thing, and so it was for kiddie-friendly stuff. And I wrote a version of it. The first version of it was just called The Twins, and it was quite different, but not enough. And it was one of those rejections where it was just like, yeah, this it's not suitable.
Were the original Grimm tales, would those be suitable by today's standards?
Well, this is my point, because that's where I was sort of going with it. I was sort of going like channeling the Brothers Grimm, And I fully understand it. It's just I had to give it a crack. You never know whether you can do something unless you try, do you? But
right,
exactly.
Every
time I see children's horror stuff now, it's just like, maybe I'll give that one a pass.
But thank you for doing this book, because it really was interesting, and you did such a good job in the beginning of explaining cosmic horror. And I'm curious, what I mean, you talk about it in the book, but what really inspired you to start writing cosmic horror and finding and figuring out your balance of humor and horror?
Yeah, the cosmic horror thing, I mean, it's what I read, and it's what I've read from a very early age. I mean, I think I've said somewhere before, I don't know whether it was in that or something else, but there's something like, say, like your horror slasher guys in the hockey masks with their machete and all that. They're flesh and blood. You may have a chance. They might be supernatural flesh and blood, but you may have a chance against flesh and blood. What chance do you have against harsh and uncaring cosmos? These things that sort of lurk on the fringes of reality. And they could be anywhere. It could be lurking sort of just out the corner of your eye. There might be something there, and that's just what gets me. What scares me. It's the unknown. It's like if you go to swim in the sea or something, and you feel that tickle of something on the back of your leg or something. Is it seaweed? Is it a tentacle? Yeah. That's the sort of thing that gets me sort of the hairs on the back of my neck standing up, and that's what I kind of want to write. Because I wanted to write the sort of thing that I read as a child, like as a kid and younger and all the rest of it. I wanted to write the stuff that scared the crap out of me when I was a kid,
Yeah.
I just wanted to give somebody else the kind of thrill that I had. And the humor, it's part of me. I mean, I was kind of raised on a diet of like the Hammer horror and all that, and the sort of the books of like Lovecraft and Arthur Machen and Algernon Blackwood. But I was also raised on like P.G. Wodehouse and the Carry On films, well, you know, and all that. And so so I've always had this sort of humor. It's just a part of me, and I think I like to use it as a counterpoint. Because I like it when I read it, when horror, where you'll have, if it's like constantly sort of flat with the dread and that, it can get a bit wearing. But if you have a little counterpoint where you'll have a moment where you can catch your breath and then you pull the rug out from under them. So they're laughing 1 minute and then you hit them with something and go, oh, that's, you know, that's my sort of thinking on it. And I just think as well, it's like people have such brilliant reactions when they're scared, and they come out with some hilarious things. You know, you see it all the time. Like if somebody's injured themselves or something like that, and they'll come out with the funniest lines.
Right.
Yeah, because you know it's one of them things, isn't it? It's like a coping mechanism, isn't it? Humor. You're like you know, and I guess that's kind of where it comes from. It's yeah, I don't think I've ever written anything that is 100% serious. There's always at least a comedy line in there somewhere, you know, a funny phrase, you know. Yeah.
Now, in your intro, you talk about a challenge that you encountered, and a very big personal challenge. And if you're comfortable talking about it, you know, how has writing helped you through that?
Yeah, you refer to that the transverse myelitis. Yeah, well, I basically started writing as a means to save my sanity because I was going absolutely crazy. Because since I'd left school, I was a chef, many years, and all of a sudden that was it. It was game over. Because when it first hit, it took out, like completely paralyzed me down my right hand side.
Oh
and I still have problems with like my feeling in this hand, and I have spasms and all that kind of business. And because it's pretty much a shadow the size of a pistachio nut on my spine between my second and third cervical vertebrae. And if I get any inflammation in my neck, like if my glands go up or anything like that, if I get any sort of pressure on it, it can take my legs out.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it's like I have a rucksack when I go out shopping and things like that. And I've got to have a walking stick in there just in case it sort of, yeah. It's treated very similarly to MS, but it's a different beast altogether. But yeah, so it's like I had to learn how to write again and all the rest of it. I had to learn how to walk again. That was strange. So I had one leg that would work, like could walk, and the other leg just wouldn't. So I had to teach my leg how to walk again. It was really bizarre. So I spent a long time in physiotherapy and all the rest of it. And obviously it was like a realization at one point that was like, yeah, well, that's it. My career's over. I'm going to have to do something else. And I'd always use books as basically, if I'm having a tough time, I'll bury myself in a book and just forget about the world for a bit. And I was reading through, it was actually The Colour Out of Space by H.P. Lovecraft. And I'd had an idea years ago, because I'd always written on and off, like in the back work diaries and things like that. If I had like a bit of downtime, I'd always written bits and pieces. And I thought, well, now I could do that novel idea. I've had this idea in my head for like 15 years. I've got no excuse anymore. I've got nothing but time, you know. And so, yeah, I basically sat myself down and taught myself how to write again, pretty much. It's like started from scratch, and I had to learn all like grammar, and I'd forgotten how to punctuate. And it was just always a nightmare to begin with. But by the time I'd written it, I had it again, and I need to go back and do something with that. And by the time I'd done it, I was just like, oh, right, I've got these other ideas, and I'll give some short stories a go. And that's pretty much how it I did it, and it was basically to stop myself from going completely doolally, because I was just so frustrated that I just couldn't. I was just like, oh, here we go. I've always been active. I've always been a very active person. I've always been like doing things, and now I can't do anything. I've just got to sit here. It's just the most frustrating thing in the world. So yeah, I just kind of went for it, really, and I haven't looked back. I haven't stopped, and yeah, it's weird how things work out. So, you know, in a way, it's you know, you've got to look for positives, haven't you, in everything. So the one positive that comes out of my condition is the fact that I've started writing, you know, and that's a pretty big positive to me right now. So yeah, I'm pretty happy, to be honest, at the moment. So it's all good. Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, I've always talked about how writing for healing and how important it is, even if you're not intending to publish anything, just getting it out, whatever it is that's inside you, you know, whether it's, you know, the inability to do something else, or just being frustrated, or, oh my God, I have this idea, just sit down and write. It doesn't matter. The first draft doesn't matter what it looks like or any of that.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I mean, it's anything like any creative endeavor, I think. It's like a lot of people find solace in music, and, you know, if you're sort of musically talented, go for it. You know, if you want to write music, write music. If you want to write a story, just something creative. I think it's just good for your brain. It just, you know, it's good to get the gears turning a bit, because you can stagnate, can't you? If you just, you know, you go to your job, you go home, you do this, you do that. If you don't engage yourself a bit, life can pass you by, I think. And which, you know, that's a terrifying thought, really. Just how quickly time flies. So you may as well do something useful, haven't you?
Yeah, the true horror is not doing anything, right?
Yeah. Inaction. Yeah, that's a terrifying thing. Yeah.
Now, Tim, I have to ask, what is your signature drink?
My signature drink is a gin and tonic, and I have my funky my Hendrix cup here. It's a most unusual gin, you know. It's I'm actually on Tanqueray today, but Hendrix or Tanqueray are kind of my tipples of choice. I'm a big fan of Plymouth gin as well, and always have the old Fever Tree tonics to go with them, because you know, nothing can kill a good gin quicker than bad tonic.
It's so true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like their Indian gin, I think they have. Or excuse me, the Indian tonic by Fever Tree.
Yes, yeah. I'm a big fan of most of them, to be honest. I really like their Mediterranean one as well, with all the basil and all that. Yeah, there are some really good ones. I mean, some go better with different gins and things like that, which is it's always fun. It's getting as complex as wine, isn't it? You have the right. This pairs well with a nice Tanqueray.
Well, yeah, we were talking in their green room about a beverage that my best friend made, which I think I mentioned in another podcast too. How she used rosemary simple syrup and just paired it with little Swiss cheese garnishes, and I was like, "What is this? Like, how did you come up with this?" Nice. And it was so good. But yeah, it's funny how we're all becoming little home bartenders now that we're spending so much more time at home. We have no choice. Funny. It's like I noticed as soon as lockdown happened, I noticed on YouTube that there was all these tutorials about how to make your own cocktails. It was all just appeared out of nowhere. Don't worry, we've got you. The internet is here.
Yeah. It's just like, well, if you ain't going out anytime soon, you may as well make your own cocktails. Pretend you're Tom Cruise in your kitchen, you know. Get your shaker out.
Who does that?
I think everybody's tried it at least once.
Right, you have to.
You end up smacking yourself in the face with a metal cocktail shaker or something.
Or dropping it, yeah.
I dropped it on my foot. That's what I did. I dropped it on my phone.
And you pour another, make it pain go away. It's all good.
Yeah. I just looking around and make sure nobody saw, you know.
Well, Tim, we're going to move right on into some of our listener questions here.
Cool.
I have one from Tiffany G from my newsletter. She asks, what is your writing routine like?
My writing routine, I tend to try and keep it almost like a 9 to 5 job. Almost, it's like I'll get up in the morning and I'll start writing, because I like to do it when there's no distractions, like my partner ain't even awake, all that kind of stuff. I've got a bit of quiet and all the rest of it. And then I'll tend to go through and I'll tend to stop sort of halfway through the day and then do all the bits and pieces, because there's all like the other stuff you've got to do, like your promotion side of it and networking and all this kind of thing, and just talking to publishers and things like that. There's a lot more to it than like people would think. I mean, there's a lot more to it than I thought when I started out. So God, you think that the writing is the bit that's going to take up all the time. It's not. That's the fun bit. It's all the stuff that comes afterwards that takes up all the time.
It's so true.
Oh man. And and then I'll do some more after dinner or whatever. So I tend to write every day, and I tend to try and keep to routines, because routines are just good for me. I'm one of them people that likes having a routine. If I don't have a routine, I don't know what to do with myself, and I just end up doing nothing. If I don't tell myself, right, come on, turn off the cat videos, time to do some work, I won't get anything done. I'll sit around posting pictures of octopus on the internet all day.
Yeah.
It's one of them people, I procrastinate if I let myself. So the key is not to let myself.
That is huge. And I think that's something that so many of us get stuck up on. And I saw this once, I can't remember who it was, but our biggest obstacle between us and our book on the shelves is us.
Yes.
And that is so true. I mean, it's hard. Don't get me wrong. It is hard. And it is a lot of work. And like Tim was saying, there are so many different facets that you have to be aware of.
Yeah.
And that's true whether you're going indie or traditional or hybrid.
Yeah.
You have to market yourself. You have to network, like you were saying. You have to find the right niche Facebook groups to be a part of. I mean, there's so many different things you have to do.
Man, and
it's incredible.
Yeah, and it's just time consuming, isn't it? It's all this stuff just takes time. And there's only 24 hours in a day, which is a pain. I wish there was more.
Right? So our next question comes from Manda Mason, who's another one of my newsletter subscribers. And she'd like to know, have you ever scared yourself with something you wrote?
I haven't so much scared myself. I have freaked myself out a bit. some of them, I can't remember what it was now. Oh, it was a bit in one of my novellas, Spiffing. It was one of the death scenes in that. And I was just like, where did that come from? It's just like, I do wonder that sometimes. It's like, where do these twisted, evil, sadistic ideas, where do they come from, man? It's like there's a loony serial killer in there somewhere. It's just in my subconscious, there's this demon or something in there. I think most horror writers do that at some point or another. Where did that come from? A lot of my ideas come from dreams as well. So, I wake up and go, well, that was weird. I'm going to write that.
And then it's like, what did I eat last night so I can replicate this?
Yeah. Strong cheese. That's always the one. Strong cheeses I always find are a good one to get the old nightmares going. I
agree with that. Yeah.
I actually said to somebody a while ago, it was one of the millions of groups that you mentioned a minute ago. Somebody had posted up because you get these advice things and all the rest of it, and it was like, I've got writer's block. Has anybody got any advice to get over it? I went, strong cheese before bed. Strong cheese before bed, and leave a notebook next to the bed. Write it down when you wake up. There you go. Sorted.
Yes. I think it was Stephen King, and it was either Stephen King or Dean Koontz, I can't remember which one, who said that when they're going through a slump, they eat a pepperoni pizza before bed.
Yes. I think it was Stephen King. I think it was. I think it's in one of his on writing, isn't it, or something?
It might be on writing, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's in that because I read that when I was starting out. Just for
That's such a good book to read. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was great because it totally prepared me the millions of rejections that you get.
Right.
When you read his story about the hook, no, it was a nail, wasn't it? That he put all his rejections on.
Yes.
He had this nail with a big stack of rejections on it.
Of publishers who are kicking themselves now. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you hear, yeah, exactly. So when you hear about like people like Stephen King have to do that, it takes the edge off it a little bit, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen a lot of writers get really, really down about rejections, and I guess I've always looked at it more of a case of, well, I mean, 9 times out of 10, it's nothing to do with the quality of the piece. It's to do with whether it fits or not.
Right.
Like for your anthologies, it's to do with whether it's a fit or, you know, so it's really more of a case of getting the right story to the right publisher at the right time. So it's a bit of a crapshoot, really. And yeah, I've seen a lot of people beat themselves up about rejections. Oh, I had another rejection. It's like this, you know, just think Stephen King gets them, you know.
J.K. Rowling got them, you know.
J.K. Rowling got them. For years and years and years, people were saying, "What's this Harry Potter rubbish?"
Oh my gosh.
It's insanity when you think about it, isn't it? That people
Yes.
are like, "Oh, what's this crap about a wizard?"
I know. I one of the things I wish I could do is, and it's a strange thing, but I remember picking up Harry Potter for the very first time at my elementary school, and it was at one of those little book fair things that we used to have.
Oh yeah.
And I wish I could go back in time and just tell myself, like, this is the one. This is going to shape you as an adult and make you a better person, and just tell my little self like how much that book was going to mean to me. And,
nice. Yeah.
And I know it's really a strange thing, but I remember just reading that story and just feeling that, but just having the appreciation and the lens that I have now and being like, follow her path and start submitting earlier.
Yeah. I, that's the one thing. If I had a time machine, I'd go back and kick myself and stop being such a, because basically for over a decade, I didn't write anything because I told myself that I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Nobody would buy it. It was, you know, I've always had massive imposter syndrome. I have it really like today. I still have it, but I just have learned to ignore it now. But for many years, I didn't submit because I just convinced myself that it wasn't good enough, which is ridiculous. It's stupid. Just I go back and give myself a slap, you know. just send it out. What's the worst that can happen, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Because it's not going anywhere if it's just on your computer.
Yeah, it's just sitting on your computer. And it's like, in some of this stuff that I've been sitting on years, I've gone back and rewritten and all the rest of it. You know, brought it up to sort of my standard now of writing. And people have loved it. And it's just like, you know what I mean? You really kick myself sometimes.
Well, Tim, this has been absolutely fantastic. And before we go, you want to tell the people where they can find you and what to expect next?
Indeed, yeah. Like I say, Pseudopod, the Rocks the Cradle's out on the 5th, out on the 5th of October, so it's probably already going to be out by the time this goes up. But I've got some other bits and pieces coming out later in the year. I've got another novella coming out in November, I believe, which is a sequel to one I've already got out called Burning Reflection. It's the sequel to that, Boiling Shadow. That's coming out in November. But the best thing to do is probably just go on my website, which is timmendesauthor.wordpress.com. I try and update it quite fairly regularly, but you know how things go. I do try and keep it up to date. Yeah, no, thank you for having me on this. It's been fun. So, yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you again for joining us. And thank you, everybody, for listening. And have a happy Halloween.
Indeed. Yeah, thank you.